What up is Marcus Dynasty Football Dads? We are doing a video on how to predict these rookie dynasty sleepers, these buys that are super low in draft capital for your rookie drafts, and how we can predict their future success. What attributes are we looking at? What draft capital are we looking at? What things can we predict to find that next Eliza Mitchell, James Robinson, Chase Claypool, whatever kind of these deeper dives. We're going to be going through it right now, but we have a DeAndre Swift signed jersey. We're going to be giving it away to one of you subscribers when we hit 2K, which might not be too far along in advance here. So let's talk about 2021. And then after this video, we're going to be doing a video on which players that we think are going to fit into this mold. But we need to figure out we have to lay down the foundation, the groundwork of what attributes we're looking at first. And so 2021 gave you three. Eliza Mitchell, it gave you Amon-Ra St. Brown, and it gave you Mildred Stevenson. And let's start with Eliza Mitchell, a smaller town, Louisiana Lafayette, one of my favorite sleeper running backs from last year. I told you guys that was one of my biggest sleepers. Him and Jarrett Patterson were my two running backs that I fell in love with at a later draft capital period. And when you were talking about that, like late second, early third round, like those were my two guys compared to even like the Khalil Herberts and many other running backs that kept getting pushed ahead of them, the Kylan Hills and all that. I was like, no, we don't want any of those players. We want Jarrett Patterson. We want Eliza Mitchell. And even I was a proponent for even James Robinson. And the reason for it is college production. Their production was at a super high level. And we're going to talk about James Robinson as well. But he also had really good opportunity. Being in Shanahan's offense is a really good spot to be in. Raheem Mostert gets hurt. Jeff Wilson gets hurt. Trey Sermon becomes not good, which we were somebody that were pretty low on Trey Sermon. And so when you have those three things, Eliza Mitchell, who had that later draft capital than Trey Sermon, ended up being the better running back of the two. So we look at Dominator Rating. That is going to be a super important aspect. And a smaller school for a running back is not a red flag. It's actually something that might be positive because they're more of a sleeper type of running back that might be into that third, fourth round when it comes to rookie draft capital versus, this is rookie draft capital, not NFL draft capital when I'm talking about that. NFL draft capital, he was a sixth rounder, so you're talking about later into those. James Robinson was undrafted. So those things potentially don't matter for some of these smaller town school guys. If they get the opportunity, they can seem to really take it. Amon-Ra St. Brown, though, he was really good at route running. His production was decent at college. His biggest thing was finding, again, opportunity. Everyone got hurt in Detroit. Opportunity does sometimes seem to be one of the biggest successors for these later round prospects, but not for these early rounds. We talk about the early round, the Clyde Edwards-Helaire, like, oh my goodness, opportunity. That doesn't seem to matter as much, and sometimes people get overdrafted early, but in the later rounds, you have to try to figure out, well, if this person gets injured, who is the next man up, Amon-Ra St. Brown, or they didn't really have any other wide receivers in Detroit, and we knew this, so Amon-Ra St. Brown was one of our favorite second-round wide receivers, even though he was drafted in that fourth round, which seems to be the huge drop-off for wide receivers. I still had him up there, even with like the Kadarius Toney types, because of his ability. That, and I thought he should have been one of the first three rounds, for one of the first day twos, one of the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft. I thought he should have been drafted that high in talent-wise, and I was actually really shocked that he fell to the early fourth round. And then Mildred Stevenson, again, good college production. Opportunity was king there for him as well. I mean, Damian Harris was the only running back there that really was competing, and he was banged up, and he had a really good year as well, top 15 year for a running back. But Mildred Stevenson showed that when he had the opportunity, that he really took it by storm. And then we're going to go through 2020. We had Antonio Gibson, Chase Claypool, James Robinson, and Darnell Mooney. Antonio Gibson and Chase Claypool, very similar, both extremely athletic and showed off the charts with that. And draft capital for Antonio Gibson and Chase Claypool were really well. They were day 2 picks, so you're talking about being in that top 3 rounds, which is very important when you're talking about players that are jumping up into those rankings. The biggest red flag for them was no production. They didn't have the production that you would want from a collegiate player going into the NFL. You see, like, okay, how does a collegiate player that only has 700 yards receiving go to somebody that's 1,000-yard receiving in the NFL? And it happens. It really does. And Antonio Gibson is like the Kamara of the collegiate level, where Kamara Kamara. I don't know how he says that both are right, but Alvin, he had very poor production in his collegiate level, and then jumped into being a superstar for the last 5 years. And so James Robinson, he had all the opportunity, all the Dominator rating, but again, no draft capital, and then being from a small school. Darnell Mooney, production, route running, small school. And then we're going to go through 2019. Deontay Johnson, Terry McLaurin, Hunter Renfrow. Terry McLaurin and Hunter Renfrow, they were from decent schools, but route running and separation were their biggest two keys. And then Deontay Johnson, small school, but also route running and separation. So where are we seeing if we came up with attributes that you would say, this is what I want? Well, from a running back, I want a small school player. I want a high dominator, and draft capital doesn't really matter. But I want either a lot of production, or I want elite athleticism when it comes to it. So you either want the Eliza Mitchell or James Robinson type, where they're into that category where Dominator rating, a ton of yards. They are basically their team's offense at a small school. Or you want the Antonio Gibson type, which is extremely athletic, not a lot of production, but you can see the glimpses of like, oh my goodness, this guy can't be stopped. Antonio Gibson looked like a man amongst boys when he played at Memphis. And so that's even Kenneth Gainwell looked at that at times too. You're like, wow, this guy has some talent. Kenneth Gainwell showed some really good sparks last year. For a wide receiver, I almost want not the same thing, but I want either a route running separation guy. I want the Terry McLaurin, the Deontay Johnson. I want the guy who can get open. I want that guy. Or again, I want the extreme athlete that maybe doesn't have the production at the collegiate level, the Chase Claypools. Those are a little bit more rare. So I'm going to say that the route running and separation is where I'm going to be looking the most at trying to find my wide receiver in 2022. Now it's going to be, okay, well, where are these guys? So in the next video, we're going to be talking about, well, which players fall into these categories. Because right now we don't know a ton of draft capital, but route separation, route running, those things are going to be so important, especially at their rookie year, the second year. We see these players, even like Bryan Edwards, that are super athletic, had early breakout age, but they don't have the route running and separation, and then they become this player that just gets mucked down the boards and ends up losing a ton of value. The super athletic, there's a ton of super athletes out there that just don't know how to make that separation and make that route running, which becomes they become a lot of busts. And so I'm going to be looking for route running, separation, and that's going to be always my number one go-to for, especially for these later players here. And then for that running back, again, I'm looking for those Dominator ratings. How high can you go? All right, this is Marcus Nice with Dads. Peace out. We'll see you tomorrow.